Well, if you're looking to get around on four wheels, perhaps you're having trouble finding a new car, or perhaps you've given up because of the economy and fears of recession. Well, DesRosiers Automotive Consultants say Canadian auto sales in July were 25% below sales for July of 2019 and the lowest levels since 2001. Okay, so what does this mean to those looking to buy a new car or for a new car? To get more on this, let's bring in Brian Kingston, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Brian, always appreciate you joining us here because this is an issue everyone needs to get around and people are maybe considering buying a car. But we also know from polling that Canadians right now are kind of holding off on any major purchases really because of the economy. We also got supply issues, still an issue with car sales. So if someone right now is perhaps trying to buy a car, is this revelation about the numbers from July good news or bad news as far as perhaps the price they're going to be paying?
Well, it's obviously concerning to see those sales numbers right now, and there's a lot of volatility and uncertainty in the market as we're seeing Canadians hit with record high inflation numbers, real affordability challenges, and obviously that translates to big purchases like an automobile. That said, good news is that we are seeing production catching up. There have been a number of supply chain challenges facing the auto industry, from the COVID lockdowns to the ongoing war in Russia and Ukraine, which has caused huge challenges for the supply chain. But production is picking up. We're not at pre-COVID levels yet, but it's looking more and more likely that you'll see North American production return to those pre-COVID levels by next year, which will be good for inventories, and it will mean that when people go to buy a vehicle, anything they're looking for will be there, available quickly.
Well, that'll certainly satisfy the people who have the demand, of course, to get a car, Brian. And semiconductors seem to be such a big part of the issue over the last couple of years. I think many of us didn't realize quite how many semiconductors and microchips, et cetera, or chips, that is, pardon me, are actually in the manufacturing of cars. I think we just, a lot of us like me, you put the key on or push the button and, hey, everything works. So with the perhaps slow demand and maybe improvements on the supply chain, you're alluding to it right there, but that seems like encouraging news for people who want to go to a lot and find a car and perhaps buy it kind of right away instead of waiting maybe 3 and 6 months now.
Yeah, I think one of the big surprises coming out of the initial COVID lockdowns and all of the economic impacts that had was that we saw sustained consumer demand for products like vehicles and other purchases. That wasn't expected. People thought that as we went into these lockdowns, we'd see a real contraction of consumer spending. Instead, demand maintained its strength, and Canadians, North Americans, went out and continued to purchase vehicles. Then we had the semiconductor shortage, which continues to be a problem. That said, U.S. has just passed the CHIPS Act, which is going to increase domestic chip production. We're seeing more and more chip production coming online. So hopefully through next year, you'll see that balance out. And ultimately, we'll see a bit of a better balance in the market between demand and supply, particularly if you start to see consumer demand come off because of all the economic concerns that we've highlighted. That may pull back a little bit on those Canadians looking to purchase a vehicle, which will balance the market.
And Brian, those factors you just mentioned, those are crucial too if you have a job that's either directly in the automotive industry or one of those other, they say for one job of the industry, perhaps there's about 7 other kind of spin-off jobs here. I wonder, from the manufacturing side, if there are any concerns, if you see this trend of, lower demand for cars, could that potentially lead to layoffs or slowdowns, car manufacturing plants if people sort of decide, you know what, I'm parking my money and I'm not buying a car right now?
Well, good news here is that we're seeing a massive transition underway in the industry. Huge spending by automakers, primarily into electrification right now. Over $500 billion is being spent on this transition, and that transformation will occur regardless of the economic scenario. So even if we do see a pullback in consumer demand, a bit of an economic downturn, automakers are committed to this transformation. We've seen over $13 billion of investment into Ontario alone. That's from Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. Big investments. And so this is going to be great for manufacturing. It's going to be great for all of these spin-off industries. And for Canada in particular, of course, we've got these critical minerals, which are so important as part of this EV battery supply chain. So no matter the economic outlook over the medium term, this transformation is happening, and I'm very optimistic around what it means for Canada, Canadians, and the economy.
All right, Brian Kingston, that's encouraging news indeed. So let's end it there. Thanks for joining us this morning here on CB24 Breakfast.
Thanks for having me on.